move on to public comment. If you wish to speak on a matter which does not appear on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. Please complete a speaker card and provide it to the clerk of the board prior to the meeting. Except as otherwise provided by law, no action shall be taken on any item not appearing on the agenda. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record. Please address the board as a whole through the chair. If you wish to speak on an item contained in the agenda, please complete a speaker card identifying the items and provide it to the clerk of the board prior to consideration for the item. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, we do. First speaker is Jerry Tatro.
Good morning, Board Supervisors. I am Jerry Tatro, 1860 Salinas Road, and I've been here before. I think you probably remember my yellow folder regarding our road and our road conditions, and they haven't improved an awful lot. You're supposed to have been on a list. I'm not sure which list, but I had a problem with a tree, and you all have a bill there regarding the removal of a tree. This was back in June, and as I'm going to pass this through you, you'll notice the green grass around one side of the tree and the brown grass around the others. I'm sorry the rest of you can't see this, but there's been a problem on my conditions that was a tree came down in the culvert, and it's belongs to the county, and it needed to be repaired, and I've done so, and I've given them a bill of $1,700.
Thank you, sir.
You just pass this through and notice the green on one side and the brown. In regards to the roads, nothing's been done to a large extent. Granite's been authorized to fill the potholes and so forth on Salinas Grade Road. It's been slow and very ridiculous that they started at the top end and instead of the bottom end where the problem is, and instead of doing the things that I've suggested to Jason, he seems to dislike any help or thoughts on anything. I in turn have seen little effort on anything being done on the culverts and in regards to the tree, and also to the guardrails. Nothing's been done to any degree. I would appreciate some more help from you people. That you tell me I'm on a we're on a list, but I'm not sure what list we're on. I'm going to end with that, and if you just pass that through and think about what I've requested of you people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Decker, can we keep this?
Randy Starbuck.
Go ahead, Mr. Starbuck. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Randy Starbuck, and I'm just here today to introduce myself to you. I'm the interim director of the San Benito County EDC. County clerk has been gracious enough to pass out my contact information to each of you so you know how to get a hold of me. Also with me today is Ms. Cassie Johnson. She is also working with the EDC in a part-time capacity. And I'm just here to say hello and to thank the board for its support of the EDC, and I look forward to working with all of you and the staff. Harry Mavrogenis and I have known each other for several years, and we've worked together most recently during our time in San Joaquin County. So again, you have my contact information. Thank you for your support, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Seeing that there's no other speaker cards, we'll go to the department head announcements, starting off with our CAO, Ray Espinosa.
Yeah, I don't think we have any announcements to report out to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
We'll go to the board here. We'll start with Supervisor Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I definitely had a really busy last 2 weeks. August 6th, the day of our board meeting, we actually that evening had the National Night Out, which was a really awesome showing of support for our local emergency responders, fire, police, search and rescue. It's pretty amazing once you get to see all the folks that are involved in protecting us. And I'm definitely really grateful for that. And I know Supervisor Gilio was there. I believe most of us were there, so, to show our support. August 7th, so I'll try to be very to the point because I do have a lot. I had a first 5 meeting, just reporting out that it looks like they're really focused on trying to get some grant funding. And we're still having ongoing conversations about ultimately their budget and stuff. So August 8th, we had the McCarthy Park grand opening. That was a really good event, definitely big showing. A lot of people really support and appreciate that park. It's a pretty amazing showing of what can be done when we work together. And then August 8th, we had that afternoon, we had I showed up a little late because we were actually one of the vendors at that event. But the San Benito County Business Council, the EDC, which I didn't get a chance to really have a good conversation with Mr. Starbuck, but we shook hands, exchanged information, and we actually have a meeting with our CAO. So just to kind of flesh out a little bit what I missed out and ultimately trying to get up to date on his presentation. And I'm still yet to get that PowerPoint. I know you had it, and I know people got excited about it. So I'd love to, if you can please send that to me. So August 15th, I met with the library folks. I know last night the city actually had a conversation about supporting the library. I actually showed up as an individual. I represented myself, and my biggest question or really ask was for us to work together if we're really supportive of the library, that we show it not just by resolution, but trying to come up with a greater funding mechanism. And then also making sure that dialogue about the feasibility study, when it comes down to it having a little bit more sustainability as far as the income resources or the income opportunities, we had that conversation about making it sustainable. So, and then having a transparent conversation with the public that they know that this is a pretty big deal. I mean, if you're going to spend this kind of money, they need to know that it's from what I've heard upwards of $40 million. And then we're also, at that point, how do you fund it, whether it's through a bond measure? And I'm not necessarily excited about that. But nonetheless, the public should be informed what they're up against. So, and then August 19th, I had a quick meeting with Commissioner Spandry because we're moving forward trying to get that Vets Park a really good conversation. I know Chair Medina is our chair of the Vets Commission, and he gave us his blessing for us to move forward with trying to work together with the leagues and ultimately trying to create a better outcome because I know a lot of these leagues are actually struggling. So anyway, there's a lot of good conversations on how to make that situation better, even protecting the liability of our county, which I know that's been a question. So August 21st, I met with Harry, and that was a really exciting meeting also, and that had to do with basically, which is, if you don't know Harry, he's our RMA director, Harry Mavroginis, and we spoke to Kevin Warner, who's the city manager of Miss Lynn Park. The whole conversation was about our sports complex concept that we're looking to bring to San Benito County. It's a really exciting thing, very tournament focused. And Miss Lynn Park, for those that don't know, it was funded partially by a generous donor. I believe his first name was Tony Mislin, which he owns Mislin Honda in the Ripon area. So that's where Mislin Park is located. It's one of the locations that we visited with the ad hoc committee that was set up by the county and the city. We visited that one, Twin Creeks, and Big League Dreams. So we have a lot of momentum going with that. It's really, really exciting. And then the last thing I wanted to share, hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, is especially considering the reality of what we've been dealing with division in our country and our community. Well, not so much in our community that I've seen, but for the most part, just in general, I think on the dais, I actually appreciate the sentiment of the chair that our goal is to be unified. Whether we disagree or agree, we still should have a sense of ethic and code, and make sure that we engage with respectable conversations. So I've really been thinking about this, and I think it would be an honor personally if we can, and with the board's support, to try to bring our national motto to our board chambers as a sign of unity, of patriotism, ultimately as a show of who we are. You know, it's who we are now, our national motto. It's on our money. I don't see why we couldn't use that as an emblem of what it means to work together and be unified. So I'd like to see if that's possible via ordinance, for us to have that conversation, whether it's through consent or action, or both. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. Supervisor Gilio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had a busy couple weeks as well. I don't think I'll go over in the interest of time everything that Supervisor Hernandez and I attended together, but I will say that there was a lot of great events in the community, and I got to tell you one of the things I'm most proud of with this board is their level of support and going out in the community, and we see each other at a lot of events, and to rest assured there's no Brown Act violations. We're just out there supporting the community and being visible, and I really appreciate that from our fellow board members. A couple of the bigger and important meetings that I think we had recently were the EDC roundtable. I want to thank Mr. Starbuck for being there at the Business Council. That was a great meeting, very well attended. I was frankly surprised. It was kind of almost standing room only out there, and there was a lot of people out there. A lot of people are really interested in the economic vitality of San Benito County. A lot of business owners want to expand. A lot of businesses want to relocate here. And us as board members representing the entire county, not just an individual city, I think are sending the message that San Benito County is open for business. We welcome business expansion and we welcome new business here. So I just want to get that message across here publicly, and we're ready for new business. We've supported the EDC as far as I know. The city and the county partnered together. The largest support that we have ever done for the Economic Development Corporation, and I think that sends a very positive message to the business community that we're here. And I want to thank you, Director Mavrogenis, CAO Espinosa, the entire county team, frankly, for all your efforts, because you have the day-to-day operations of running a county, which can be overwhelming with the amount of resources that we have. And then when a new business or a existing business wants to expand, we're immediately meeting with them, talking with them, and thank you for that. It's really important. So COG is a couple things going on at COG that we need to pay attention to. SB1, you guys have all heard me say it. I say it about every meeting I'm at, and I'm kind of like the little boy who said the sky was falling. And so, you know, our formulaic, the way the funds are allocated with SB1 is likely going to change. The governor still has not signed SB 277 that I'm aware of this morning. Could happen while I'm sitting here, I'm not sure. We're still hopeful that he'll leave the funding alone for the full 2-year cycle, but what it means for us is a less of a match. So we're going to use our local funds. We're expecting a certain amount of match, and that could most likely will decrease significantly. So we need to be watching that and being creative and lobbying our federal and state partners to figure out other sources of funds, because that's only one source. There's other sources. So we need to stay on top of that and work on those partnerships. And the other thing that came up is roundabout 25 and 156 at the COG board. I was on the COG board at a prior agency I worked at with the city. So I've been on COG for probably about 2 years now, roughly, and we've all directly expressed our concerns to Caltrans about the roundabout, the functionality, number one, and number two, that it's a temporary project until we get the overpass built. So that is very concerning that Caltrans doesn't seem to be, they seem to be going down a path that is concerning to the COG board. We're directing our staff to meet between now and our next COG meeting with the director of Caltrans to understand their perspective, and then also hopefully we can understand our perspective, because when this all started, we didn't have the Measure G funding in place. Now we do. We have other options, so we're hopeful that those conversations can take place and we can find a solution that will last for the long term. That's probably one of the most important things I think that came out of COG for this meeting. As you all know, I reported last time, our Citizens Advisory Committee is up and running. We are collecting money. I've been told that we have about $1 million in our Measure G fund. None of that has been spent or allocated. We just started collecting in April, and we're working on the strategic plan now. So that's kind of the brief update from COG, and we'll have more. And Supervisor Botello, probably, you know, you've been here a lot longer than me, so if you have anything else to add to COG, that would be great. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is that I met with Congressman Panetta and we specifically talked about infrastructure and resources for opening Clear Creek National Park. And he wanted me to be assured that we have not forgotten about San Justo. San Justo is still a hot topic for him and us, and we're working through the government bureaucracy to see what we can do to get that reopened. And Clear Creek is actually progressing pretty well for now, knock on wood, and we're hoping that that will have some positive results as well, because that's another economic development opportunity for us and recreation. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll say thank you for your time.
Thank you. Supervisor Patella?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. I want to first lead off with a reminder to everybody in the county that Aromas Days is this coming Sunday. It's a fun time in Aromas, and you know, it starts off with a pancake breakfast at the Grange at 7 o'clock through 9. It's a good deal, and you meet with a lot of people, and it's kind of a family atmosphere for sure. There's a lot of booths and things to see set up down the Carpinteria Street, and a lot of things to buy. If you're in need of anything, you could buy it in Aromas. So that's this coming Sunday. And as the presentation we had a little earlier about the day in San Juan Bautista, Follow the Trail of History on September 7th, really looking forward to that. And now that we know what it's about, free hot dogs, I know Supervisor De La Cruz will be there.
What?
Oh, yeah, he
I heard that part.
likes tacos.
So I'm looking forward to seeing him there, and maybe I'll join him for a free hot dog. But getting honest, I attended a couple of meetings myself last week. Went to the Representative of California Rural Counties, RCRC, and a couple of interesting items that was discussed. First, I want to mention that Monterey County joined that organization, which I think is very, very good for our county. We share a lot of the same issues. So now they were assigned to what we call a District 5, which consists of ourselves, San Luis Obispo, Monterey County, Merced, and Madera. And so I'm looking forward to working with Supervisor Lopez, and his alternate is Supervisor Phillips. And so it's a real good add-on. Another item that we had quite a long discussion about, and one of the primary reasons I was looking forward to this particular meeting was the board took a position on Assemblyman Rivas's bill. Let me see, where is it? Here it is. 1783, and that dealt with agricultural employee housing. As we're all aware, not only is workforce housing, agricultural housing is really a acute problem here in San Diego County and the region, but it is statewide. And I still want to call him a supervisor, but Assemblyman Rivas, tackled this with the agricultural housing as far as trying to make it a little bit easier for agriculture to deal with some of its labor issues and housing issues. And I was very supportive of this bill. And I've had an opportunity to talk with him extensively, just as a supervisor and as being involved in agriculture and the challenges that we have. And initially, RCRC was opposed to 1783, and they had the courtesy to give me a call, and I was able to talk to the lobbyists and staff about the pros of the bill, and they expressed the cons, of course, and pretty much worked with them with Assemblyman Rivas's staff, and they amended the bill to the point that for this meeting to support it, and a staff recommendation to support. And I was pretty excited about that prospect. I think it's great to go from opposition to support, and that's what RCRC strength is to work with legislators and mold legislation that affects rural counties in such a way that benefits us, and I was very happy with that. Unfortunately, although Assemblyman Rivas was pleased, the RCRC board, by a 17-14 vote, took a neutral position. Farm Bureau in a number of the rural counties were concerned about the bill addressing subsidies to H2A housing. And they were concerned about that, and they decided to take a neutral approach on 1783, and that's kind of how it went down. But I think it's a pass in any case at the Assembly, and we're, little steps to address the housing crisis in California. Last, I'll add on a little bit to Supervisor Gilio's report on COG. It's pretty thorough. I don't have a whole lot to add other than we have to work with Caltrans District 5. We're committed to, highway safety. Something needs to be done at 25 and 156. It is a dangerous intersection, and hopefully locally and through the district and the state, we continue to develop the dialogue that we need to have at COG. I know our RMA director is now engaged with District 5 and getting kind of up to speed as far as what the projects are out there, and also conveying his thoughts and his experience to what needs to be done to improve the situation that we have with safety first, and then congestion on our local highways. And hopefully in September we'll have a good meeting with the director of District 5. He's to come down and attend. And maybe we could do some, also express some of our other concerns on a more of a intimate level with him, and share some ideas and innovations. If funding is going to be kind of tough for the highway projects, we have to do what we can to meet the obligations that we made to the citizens of San Benito County. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dela Cruz.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I too attended the Nights Out downtown. I want to thank Supervisor Hernandez for being there, and I think I also saw Supervisor Gilio there, and it's always wonderful to have these type of functions, knowing that the kids are out there and just being impressed by law enforcement. That's a good way of reaching out and communicating with our community and the law enforcement. The next day, I attended the streets safety and improvements at the Veterans Hall. In fact, I think I remember seeing Joe Paul Gonzalez at that meeting. We had about 40 concerns residents attend the meeting, and it was well educated. A lot of good information was shared with the public. We want to make sure that that it addresses safety improvements in our community, especially around schools. That's very important. Where school's in session now, and kids are their safety is concerned, and so we as elected officials need to come up with some way in how we can mitigate that safety issue for our kids. I also attended the business council meeting in San Juan Oaks, and it was actually very educational because for me it's been a while that I attended that meeting, and it looks like there were a lot of people in attendance, and it seems like it was very diverse, and I think the public is ready to move on and start working in the best interest of our community. So that was exciting, and again, I thank you to Supervisor Gilio, Hernandez, and Mark Medina for attending the meeting. I attended the dedication of the McCarthy Park, and I kind of take that dear in heart to me because It is in my district. I kind of started the whole process way about 10 years ago where we allocated $75,000 to build a small playground area out there, and then the city hall matched it with two point something million dollars, and I kind of give the city hall a lot of credit for moving forward with that. So it's very exciting. That part of the community now is a beautiful park we can name our own. I also attended the San Benito House Foundation grand opening of their new self-sufficient facility, in which they will now become self-sufficient and not rely on PG&E. In fact, they'll be providing energy back to PG&E according to their new system, which costs about $2 million. And my understanding that it will be repaid back in about 30 years. And finally, Mr. Chair, a joy or something that hits me real good, and that is I want to thank the Farm Bureau for hosting a nice barbecue day at the labor camp. I'm a sucker for good food, and I was definitely there, and it was good to see Supervisor Hernandez, Gilio, and our chairman there. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I will make mine real short. Last night at the city council meeting, they resurrected the tax sharing agreement committee, the ad hoc committee. So I'd like to see if Supervisor Hernandez would be interested in attending with myself, becoming part of that committee. We'll have our own tax sharing agreement committee. It will consist
I'd
of you
appreciate
and I.
it, Mr. Chair.
Do I have the blessing of the board?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, once again, yes, last week or 2 weeks ago, we spoke about teamwork. I just want to bring up something that I was thinking about. It's called an ego. It's basically a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. Sometimes in today's day and age, we often have an ego, and we use that ego in a not a good way. We sense to not pay attention to our constituents, and that's what I want our board to really concentrate upon, is we were elected to take care of our residents. We have to put some of our personal feelings aside and do what's best for the community. And sometimes that is agreeing with or working with people that you do not agree with 100%, but you take some of their thoughts, some of your thoughts, and together you have something that is a phenomenal decision. So I just want everybody up here to think about that every time they make a decision, every time they are in public, that we represent the residents, and they are, as someone told me this morning, they are our customers. So with that, we'll continue our meeting, and we'll go into our consent agenda. There's 14 consent agenda items today. Is there any items that the board wishes to pull at this time?
5.
Anthony would like to pull number 5. Anyone else?
Number 2.
Supervisor Hernandez, number 2. So we have 5, or I'm sorry, we have 2 and 5. Do we have anything from the public? With that being said, what's the wish of the board?
Move to approve the amended consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. That brings us to number 2, which is adopt a resolution approving a Proposition 68 grant application for the San Benito County River Parkway focus area.
I'll defer to Supervisor Peter Hernandez.
So I just pulled it, honestly, mostly just to thank our CAO and staff, because ultimately this shows their focus and their intent to really move this thing forward and be, it just excites me that staff is like, ultimately you guys have been so amazing in working with us to make sure that we're setting this time aside, so we're having these conversations and figuring out the logistics, and ultimately you guys obviously getting the blessing of the board to move this forward. And so the Prop 68 grant is obviously a grant that you guys actually worked really hard within a short period of time to make it happen, which is also amazing. Thank you to Stuart. I'm not sure if he's here, but I know that he was a big part of that. But ultimately, the goal is for this to be the phase one element of that River Parkway, that sports complex project, and is to the benefit of our community because the focus is trails, the focus is ultimately a community benefit. So it's really, really exciting to see these pieces come together, and I just wanted to thank our CAO and staff.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may echo real quick, just briefly what
Sir.
what Supervisor Hernandez said. This was a very short turnaround. The staff found out about this, and I was super impressed with how quickly they turned out not only this grant, but 2 grants. And Dulce, I think you need to be mentioned. Ray, your team, thank you. Edgar, thank you guys. And this is way off topic, and Mr. Chair is probably going to reprimand me, and I'll pay my fine if I have to. Dulce, I forgot during my report to thank you for your time at Stuff the Bus. She came out to deliver our, we had some goods in the lobby. She came out to deliver them super early in the morning, and she was still there at, what, 10, 12? She stayed the whole time and worked really hard, so thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No problem. What's the wish of the board on number 2?
I make a motion that we approve number 2 as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. We'll go on to number 5, which is a coming from Sir Joe Paul Gonzalez's office.
Yeah, I want to thank our auditor here for bringing this forward. The only thing that there's a couple of things that kind of caught my eye as I was reading this, and is that it's a voluntary agreement, and there's a couple of conflicts that that I kind of have, and maybe between you and our treasurer could clarify for me. And this is about making sure we're compensated on our guests transient occupancy tax. People are staying here. Why is it voluntary? Shouldn't it be mandatory if we have a tax and those type of businesses that are operating within our county? Isn't that what other counties would be doing?
Yes, that would be true, except for, in this case, this is a voluntary agreement because Airbnb does not consider themselves the operator. They consider themselves acting as the operator in this agreement. Because, it's really the homeowner who's responsible to collect the tax, or whoever the hotel or whatever it is that must be paying the tax is responsible.
And that's kind of what my thought was exactly as well. And that whoever is operating a bed and breakfast, which I really encourage, I think it's a great opportunity for people to have, and I'm a big fan of bed and breakfasts after going to New Zealand. A great way to get to know the community. But shouldn't they be filing for a business license, and that they would be directly the ones that should be paying this tax?
I believe in this case, I'll let Barbara answer that question because it's a legal question.
A lot of jurisdictions have entered into this agreement. There's a couple that have not entered into this agreement. So this agreement's very common with other jurisdictions. If we wanted to really push Airbnb, we could try to take the enforcement action, but this is the way to actually just get them to collect the tax starting, I believe it's October 1st, without
September 1st.
Okay, without having a great deal of more back and forth with them. We did push back on this agreement and suggested many changes, but they weren't very agreeable to changing the standard agreement that they've had with other jurisdictions. So we could be more aggressive, I think San Francisco has, but our level of TOT is much smaller than San Francisco, and it's an issue of kind of time and energy as to collect this amount of money where they will collect it and remit it to us on a voluntary basis.
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
if I may, so Joe Paul, and this may be to in my mind, because I already have my assumptions, but I want to make sure they're cleared up by your understanding. So with Airbnb, if they're kind of like an agency like Uber that contracts with individual folks per se, and they basically come up with an agreement, and at that point there's like there's an expense to be part of Airbnb, and then at the same time, there's obviously an income generation from the actual individual, correct? Or am I mistaken?
Right, the individual property owner or, you know, the person, actually renting out the location, does it in order to earn an income.
Yeah, so, and it's, at that point, just because I have a relationship with Hoover through my business, I understand there's the reason why it's even become a big demand ultimately is because it's the convenience. So you can have, instead of hiring your own staff and then obviously paying payroll and then taxes and all these other things, you use someone else's services and they contract, and ultimately they're the big umbrella. But it still means that on the individual level, a business license, any kind of tax for that it could be too burdensome, especially in our own community, being as small as it is. So personally, I think just my encouragement to you, Supervisor Botello, or to the board in general, that, we should be careful that we don't overburden folks that are starting up. Give them an opportunity to be successful. Maybe you create measurements according to their success, that might at that point they can somehow absorb. But I would just want to be careful that we don't try to put too much weight on these individuals that ultimately doesn't allow them to be successful, especially with tourism and all these other elements that provide other benefits for our community.
I do note that the agreement has a termination clause in it, so we can proceed with this agreement. If for some reason it's unsatisfactory to us, we can terminate it in the future.
Mr. Chair, if I may make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Joe Paul, thank you very much for getting this done. I appreciate it, and I think this is a really good start. And if you think about it, these things can pop up and pop down because it's an online service. I can go today, I've never done it, but if I wanted to rent out a room in my house, you go sign up with Airbnb, and you could have an Airbnb for 2 weeks because it's, around the 4th of July and we're really busy, and then you can shut your Airbnb down. So there's a lot of that. So I think what you have done is great, because we're going to have Airbnb being the collection agent for us and sending us those funds.
Yep.
And we don't have the amount of Airbnb that, say, San Francisco or San Diego or all these folks have, obviously. So to have a staff member, so to speak, have to go around to all these different Airbnbs that pop up and down and monitor them, I think would be very overburdensome, and probably we'd spend more money trying to collect what little money we're going to collect anyway. So I really support what you've done here today. I think this is a really good start, and I think we should give it a shot for a year or so and just take a look at it, and we can always modify or change or do different things, or maybe look at business licenses in the future. But I think this is a really good start in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and just kind of wrap up, I'm very supportive of this. I'm really happy that we're doing this, and promoting, B&Bs, and I do think that, if you're going business in our county, it just public safety, and also to, collect what should be collected on the impacts. A business license is required, but this is a good step, and I want to thank everybody involved in this, and good work.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further comments?
I'll make a motion to approve item 5 as staff recommendation.
All in favor?
That's all right.
Aye.
5-0. That concludes our consent agenda. We'll go on to our regular agenda. Start off with our Health and Human Services Agency. And Ricky?
Good morning, members of the board and the public. I wanted to share with you the San Benito County Homeless Census Executive Summary Report. Let me get this. Okay, where's the PowerPoint slideshow? Bottom right here.
No.
The middle, right
Okay.
there.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So, San Benito County has been a member of the Salinas Monterey Continuum of Care. We actually became members in 2011. The Continuum of Care is the main goal is to end homelessness in both counties. Oops, let me see. So as a member of the COC, we have been eligible to receive different types of funding, and one of them is the HUD funding that we get, and approximately $242,000 for operations of the Helping Hands Permanent Supportive Housing Program. We've also been operating the Winter Shelter Program for homeless families. In this program, we've been operating it for 30-plus years. We also help facilitate with your support and support of other organizations, the Home Resource Center, which is operated by the Community Homeless Solutions. We have a hotel voucher program, provide transportation tokens for individuals that need to get back to and from appointments. And we also operate other rental assistance programs. So I wanted just to highlight that. And we are required every 2 years to conduct the point-in-time homeless census. This year, we conducted the homeless census January the 31st of this year with 24 volunteers and staff. When we look at data since we've become members, 2011, we started with 192, went up 2 years later, 365, 651. That was a huge jump. 2015, then we had about almost a 20% dip, 527. And this time, to my surprise, it dipped quite a bit, about 47% or so. So the point-in-time homeless census count is 283. That morning we had 8 different teams. We followed the same process as before, 8 teams that went to different census tracts, different identified locations, and those are the individuals that were counted, which included those in hotel, and those in emergency shelter, those in the river, those in campers, you name it. So it was quite a dip. It really depends how we look at things. We're doing our job, and homeless is going down. Or another thing is it rained a lot during this period of time, all the week before, so they could have also gone in places where it was harder to locate. So I just wanted to share that. 40% were sheltered and 60% unsheltered. And 85% of responders indicated they were residing in San Benito County prior to becoming homeless. Length of time in San Benito County, 19% had been here 1 year or less. 26% 1 to 4 years, 10% 5 to 9 years, and 44% 10 years and more. 40% of responders indicated their current episode of homelessness was their first. And as far as age of first episode of homelessness, 3% said they were between the age of 0 to 17, 12% 18 to 24, 85% 25 years plus, and 13% said they'd been in the foster care system. And 12% of responders spent at least one night in jail, prison, juvenile hall in the past year. Accommodations on the count night. So we head out about 6:30 a.m. The count night of the responders, 29% said they were in emergency shelter, 22% slept the night before in a tent, 12% outdoors, streets, parks, 10% in motel, 10% in vehicles, 6% in encampments. Age, 15% said they were under the age of 18, 10% 18 to 24, 1% 18 to 24, and 84% were 25 plus. So most of the homeless individuals that responded to the survey were 25 plus. 52% were male, 47% were female, and 1% they don't identify themselves as either male, female, or transgender. Primary event or condition that led to homelessness. The top 7 respondents were 73% said there was financial issues. They lost a job, they were evicted, you name it. So it shows, in my opinion, poverty is real and poverty affects individuals, which is a primary reason that leads to homelessness. 20% were due to divorce, separation, breakup. 15% fight or some type of conflict. 15% had legal issues. 10% alcohol or drug use, and 7% mental health issues. 6% incarceration. First episode of homelessness, 40% of responders indicated the current, did I already? Oh, no. Current episode of homelessness was the first. So they were also asked, what are the ways for you to get permanent housing? And the top responses were they would need, 84% said, I'd need help with rental assistance. 38% help with job, getting more income. 14% money for move-in costs. When they find an apartment or some type of housing, they need help with move-in costs. 10% help finding an apartment. That could be housing navigator or some type of staff that helps them with that. Duration of current episode of homelessness, 4% were 30 days or less, 46% between 1 month and 11 months, 50% 1 year or more. These are self-reported health conditions. 32% they said they suffer from depression. 17% other psychiatric, emotional condition. 15% alcohol and drug use. 10% post-traumatic stress disorder. 14% chronic health problems. 16% physical disability. 7% traumatic brain injury, and 2% HIV/AIDS related illness. 23% of responders reported having at least one disabling condition. And those, they were also asked services and assistance that they receive, and 79% said they reported receiving some type of government assistance. And those that are not receiving, top 6 reasons said 30% think I'm eligible, don't think they're eligible. 25% don't want assistance. 13% have never applied. 5% benefits were cut off. 5% no permanent address, and 5% no ID. And from those that are receiving assistance, 70% said they receive some type of meal assistance. 38% shelter day services, 35% emergency shelter, 21% bus passes, 16% health services, and 9% mental health services. And that summarizes the homeless census executive summary. I want to point out that the report, I printed copies there in the back table. For those that would like to take one, please make yourself comfortable. And are there any questions?
Yeah, Enrique, very good report, very concise, and I think it's one of your better reports in a long time on the homeless census. It's very good. Anyway, what kind of caught my eye was the veterans. Come on, computer. There we go. Sheltered and unsheltered. You know, if you know, it's not a big sample of 15 individuals. It looks like maybe one is sheltered and the balance is unsheltered. And with all the benefits and programs out there for veterans, I think out of any population that they ought to be the ones that probably would be most impacted for us being able to help and get them sheltered. Is there an issue or a way that we could maybe do a little bit better in that capacity, or they just don't want to be sheltered?
No, these stats were based on the survey. So we counted 200 and let me look again, 283, and then we had approximately 110 complete the survey. and from those, that percentage reported, being a veteran. So we could make it maybe be more conscious for next time to count more veterans to assess that a little bit better.
Yeah, and, and the other statistic that I thought was very interesting, and which is to everybody involved, all the agencies and nonprofits that are involved in this, the families having it 100% sheltered, that really stands out in this this report. And I'm sure there's families out there that are not sheltered, but and we hopefully we continue to work towards helping them, especially with young children involved, and that was real good work, I thought.
And that's the reason being is we operate the winter shelter for homeless families. And the night of the count, the day of the count, we had approximately 19 families that were sheltered. And when you take into account the parents and the children represented that percentage. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Enrique, I'm looking at the primary event of condition that led to homelessness, and you're telling me that 73% was because of they lost their job, they lost that one paycheck, then they moved from that rental assistance to homeless?
That is what they reported. Combination of, it could also be losing their job, probably the primary, which may have led to losing their home, and eventually that would be only speculation, but that is what they reported, that category, as far as losing the income.
And then also, residents prior to homelessness, 85% of the homelessness lived in San Benito County?
That's what they reported. So it shows that we are serving individuals that have been residing in this county.
Wow. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I just had one question, Enrique. I know at one time there was, I've heard that there was, like buses that would bring homeless folks from outside communities, and I'm wondering if, I don't know if that even stopped or if that's still happening, but obviously that there was a big drop. Was that drop in between those years? Like when, basically, because the 2015 it was heightened, right, at 651, and then it dropped to 2019, so it was a huge drop. So was it prior to that, maybe, when there was any kind of influx of homeless folks? I know one of the things that I've heard is that we provided so many services that other communities didn't, which is a good thing. It's drew more folks to our community. And then even piggybacking off of what Supervisor Delacruz mentioned is, obviously, most of these folks are from our community. Anybody over 10, basically that's lived here 10 years plus, that's the majority of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to know what is the capacity, basically, ultimately, that you have with any kind of influx of homeless, and how do you counter that? Like, what do you do to try to mitigate that?
From working in helping homeless individuals, 3 years ago, for about 2-year period, off and on, I did hear there's individuals that were dropped off in the county. Other groups of individuals perhaps being staying at 1,000 Trails, camping out there. And an organization from Gilroy, from doing some research, had gone out and dropped them off there. And then on a morning, daily basis, went out there and checked on them, providing resources and stuff like that. And that eventually, we addressed it at the time. That eventually went away. And then later on, I had heard, other vans or individuals being dropped off here. But I would say it's at least a year that I have not heard anything. I'm not sure if it's stopped or what. As far as staff capacity, we are a very small department. We've been blessed to and fortunate to receive different types of funding, from rental assistance to the winter shelter program. I think, ongoing funding to sustain programs and also expand our programs that allows us a little bit more capacity. I think there's still a lot of needs. This number 283 depends on how you look at things, but 283 is still almost 300. That's still a lot of people out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of others that were not counted. So, real solution, again, in my opinion, is permanent housing, whether it's smaller units, tiny homes. We need a lot more support and a lot more help, but for the time being, I think we're doing a terrific job. My staff is doing terrific.
So, and I definitely agree, Enrique. I know I visited the center, me and Supervisors De La Cruz. We had visited you with the Health and Human Services Director, Tracy Belton, and it was a really lively conversation. You toured the you gave us a tour of the facility, and I know that you guys are actually considered to be ahead of the state as far as implementing new ways to try to address the homeless issue. I'm just wondering that with that tiny home concept, is there an opportunity? I mean, I imagine you do, but just to inform my discretion, are you guys having a transitional program to try to support getting folks back on their feet?
So we have two projects that we'll be working on this year. One of them is a grant that we received, $1.4 million. And I believe, Harry, I think, next month or in a couple of months, we hope to begin construction right at the Home Resource Center. The back portion of the building, there'll be 8 units, small 200 square feet unit with a common kitchen, common laundry facility. Each unit will have their own space, their own restroom. And it'll create 8 transitional type units for 2 years. We also got HEAP funding, of which $1.85 million, of which $1.1 million will be dedicated for transitional housing. We'll build 14 units at the Migrant Center, the top end next to the trailers. And we're working with a contract with the COC, the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers in Monterey. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I have a contract meeting, and if everything goes well, we should bring that item here in September for approval of the contract funds. And we also have been contracting with a Community Service Development Corporation. They operate a 2-year transitional housing program, which is the mobile park right on top of the Migrant Center.
Awesome.
And I think there's about 15, 18 units or so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any public comment? Bring it back to the board. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This will bring us to number 16, our county treasurer, tax collector.
No, it was just receive presentation.
Good morning. Before we go to the discharge of accountability, I wanted to take the opportunity to discuss some of our statistics, our collection statistics this year, and a little bit of information about what we do in the tax collector's office. So a little bit of background information. The tax collector is an elected official governed by the revenue and taxation codes, and we are responsible for the billing and collection of all real and personal property taxes. These taxes include secured, unsecured, supplemental, and delinquent bills. We are also responsible for the auction, the tax sale of tax defaulted properties. And as of July 1st, 2019, we are responsible for the business license tax program that the voters approved in November 2018, known as Measure H. So how did we do on our collections this year? So as of June 30th, 2019, excuse me, our current secured collection rate was 98, almost 99%. And our unsecured, current unsecured was also 98%. Our supplemental taxes, our current supplemental taxes were 75%. A little disappointed in that rate, and I'll go on to explain some of the issues with that. Our delinquent secured which are kind of people headed for the tax sale. We had a 66% collection. We had probably half a dozen of really delinquent, pretty high values that paid off during this year. And then our delinquent unsecured, which we're going to talk about, is kind of our problem child. And we only collected roughly 8% of what was on the receivables this past year. So what did our receivable look like altogether? So our secured receivables were about $102 million. It was about 87% of everything that we had to collect. Our current unsecured, was about $5 million, and that was about 4% of our total receivables. The current supplemental was a little more than the unsecured, about 5.5%, 5.5 million, and that was roughly 5%. Our delinquent secured, it's about $3 million, and about 3% of our total receivable. And then our delinquent unsecured, we had not quite $1 million to collect, and it's really a little bit less than 1% of our total receivables. For those that prefer numbers instead of graphs or pictures, this is the data that created those graphs. So supplemental bills, again, we were a little disappointed that we only collected 75% of supplemental bills. I think there's a little bit of confusion, and we also issued roughly 200 supplemental bills every month. There's a lot of housing changes, change in ownership going on. So what are supplemental bills? And basically it's as of January 1st, the assessor puts a value on your property, on the property, and then when it changes ownership, which is the most common reason for a change in value, you add a pool, put a garage on, add to your home, something that has kind of a new construction and added value becomes a new value. And so a supplemental bill is created when the old value and the new value, there's a difference, and that creates a supplemental bill. The assessor revalues the property, and then roughly within that year, you receive a notice that you'll be receiving a supplemental bill. And then the auditor takes the difference and prorates the amount of time that the value was different and creates a tax bill. We send out those tax bills, and then we're charged with collecting them. So I believe that one of, and listening to a lot of reasons why people didn't pay their supplemental bill is because a lot of them think that we are sending those bills to their lender. We send the secured bills to the lender. However, we do not send the supplemental bills to the lender. Those are the responsibility of the taxpayer. Every now and then you can get a lender to pay your supplemental bill. However, it's your responsibility to contact your lender. And some of them will pay that through your impound account. Most of them won't. So what are some things that we're trying to do to be a little more proactive on our communications and information that we provide to taxpayers? As we now have a bilingual services provided in our office. We have a new answering service message that says if you leave your name, your number, and the property that you're calling about, we will be returning calls within. We usually return them within the day. And then at the end of the English message, we also have a bilingual message. We've been sending out inserts in bills that we send out in our unsecured, our supplementals, and our upcoming secured bills that are English on the front, Spanish on the back, and they just kind of explain what the bill is about. And then we are targeting a couple of specific delinquent areas, bills that are pretty close to being on the tax default sale. We are trying to contact those homeowners so that we can see if we can, get them to pay those before they, to avoid being on a tax sale. And then because we seem to be having a little more concerns and challenges with the supplemental bills, if you miss your first installment payment, then we are sending you a reminder notice. So I'm missing a couple. Oh, here we go. So our delinquent unsecured, we had roughly $1 million to collect. And as we saw before, we collected about 7% of that, which equaled about $72,000. And those delinquent taxes run from 2002 to 2018. Unsecured taxes, they can be subject to, if you don't pay them, they can be subject to a lien and also to bank seizures. The liens are good for 10 years and they can be extended for another 10 years. Bank seizures, we can go back 3 years and forward to do a bank seizure. And then this morning, you approved an MOU with Caltrex, which is a new division of CSAC that it provides us another tool with the Franchise Tax Board. So before we get to, before your property becomes a delinquent unsecured tax, we have, it's considered a current unsecured tax. And every month we are sending notices, placing liens, doing bank seizures. So every month we're trying to do something to get those current unsecured taxes paid before they go delinquent on June 30th. So what I'm here today is I have a proposal that we discharge some delinquent unsecured taxes. Again, the total unpaid was $842,000, and we just added, as of July 1st, we added another $89,000. The proposed net discharge is $391,000. An analysis of what makes up that number, we looked at delinquent unsecured bills up to 2010. Anything prior than that was on the list. And then those that are inactive, that they've somehow contacted the assessor to tell them they're out of business, they sold their boat, they don't own the mobile home anymore. That kind of information, they are now considered on the inactive status. It doesn't discharge them from the bill that they currently had. And then we looked at people that had been on, had not paid a tax bill for 1 to 3 years. We can discharge the taxes, they can still be collected. However, once they reach the 3-year mark, it becomes more of a challenge for us because we can't do, the lien should already be placed and it will still be in effect. However, we can't do bank seizures, and all we basically do is send out delinquent notices. And it keeps, interest keeps collecting and notice fees keep occurring.
Before we move to the next slide, Mr. Chair, I just have a quick question. By kind of writing off this 400,000, does that kind of changes our fund balance for the general fund, or how does that impact our budget process?
So property taxes are one of our largest revenues for the general fund. We are already a teeter fund, Teeter County, and so we've already paid all these taxes to the general fund. Discharging them, as you could see, it's less than 1% of our entire collection receivables. And the unsecured is even, is less than 1%, and the share that the county receives is even, 11 cents of that. So it would make a small difference to the county general fund. But the time that we're expending to try to collect these taxes is costing us quite a bit of money also.
Yeah, so we're incurring the costs of trying to collect these taxes for the benefit of the state,
Pretty much.
pretty much. Okay, that helps. I just wanted to bring that fact out and make sure the public understands, this process and where the money does ultimately go and how much work it is to collect it, and we only get a small portion of it anyway.
Of that 391,000, I thought if you were interested too, basically we have 696 tax bills that we're looking to discharge. 197 of them are on the inactive status, a little more than $65,000. We have around 284 mobile homes. It appears that they just didn't go through the proper process of the seller to the new buyer, and then also to the Department of Housing. That whole process didn't quite process correctly, and so we have about $151,000 on the mobile homes that we're looking to discharge. And then 215 of them, 174,000, they're just old. They date from 2003 up to 2010. Any questions?
I had one question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's, what venues are, you using to try to educate the public on a supplemental bill? Or maybe that's not your, ultimately you don't have the resources to do that, I'm not sure, but ultimately I'm just wondering, I don't want people to have to get their property seized because they missed a bill. And, a supplemental bill, unless you really understand the reasoning behind it, I get mail and sometimes I don't pay attention.
Right, okay.
It's to a certain extent, and I remember even calling actually in reference to my business, because I did have an unsecured, basically debt due or payment due based off of my physical property, my appliances and stuff for my business. I called and I had to have it explained, like, what is this? Like, I don't, and then, so anyways, as I am a new business, it took me a while for me to figure that out. And I don't know how many folks do that. Then with the supplemental, if you're basically, if you bought a new house, do you get a new supplemental bill, or, and when does it trigger that? Does it take a couple years for them to receive that bill?
No, they should normally receive it within about 9 months. We created a new insert to go with the supplemental bills that kind of explains what a supplemental bill is. We're processing a lot of them. Last week we processed 400 of them. People are just not understanding supplemental bills, I think. So we also, in June, we looked at the beginning of June, we looked at all the unpaid supplemental bills for the year, and we sent out notices that said, final notice, past due. And we got a lot of attention that way. We actually collected $250,000 of supplemental bills that were scheduled to be delinquent on July 1st. I'm also looking at the bill that we send, I think looks very generic. And so we're looking at printing a new bill that has our county logo and looks a little more official when people get it. It takes 5 years to become on the the tax sale. Obviously, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We want to avoid that. So we want to work with people, and if we can send a reminder if they miss their first installment. Again, there's another little insert that kind of explains, you know, you missed your first installment, a reminder notice when you've missed your first installment. You know, what can we do to help you pay this?
Thank you.
So I feel like we're doing a lot of better communication to people.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any public comment? Bring it back to the board. Any further questions for the board?
Motion at this time?
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt resolution for discharge and accountability of delinquent unsecured accounts in the net amount of $391,470.95 for unpaid taxes related to years 2002 to 2009, and authorize the chair to execute this document.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Takes us to number 17. This is a presentation only. No action is needed. This comes out from our Office of Emergency Services. Kevin O'Neill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Let me just get this PowerPoint. And then, do you already have them? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so I was asked to give an update on kind of what's going on with the Office of Emergency Services. Real quick before I get into the PowerPoint, I want to talk a little bit about what the Office of Emergency Services role is in county government during disasters, et cetera, because I do not address it specifically in the PowerPoint. What we are, why we exist, is we speak enough of the various public safety and public departments' languages. So for example, I speak enough law enforcement, not enough to do the job, enough the fire service, not enough to do the job, but enough to bring everybody together, get everybody to the table and working together. And that happens before a disaster, that happens during a disaster, and that happens after, during the recovery phase. That is really our main purpose. And we do that through a lot of different ways. We do it through planning meetings, we do it through the Emergency Operations Center, and we do it through the long-term recovery process, which is working with our state and federal partners, as well as our local partners, our public administrators, our elected officials, et cetera. In addition to that, we do a lot of community engagement, community preparedness, which I will get into some of the activities we're doing. And the idea behind that is that we want to build the preparedness of the individuals in the community, to build their resiliency, so that hopefully all of those people that we are able to touch, to inform, to have them understand what's going on, simple things like turning off their own gas, that's one less person that the fire department needs to worry about, right? One less person that the sheriff's department needs to evacuate in the event of a large disaster. And that helps lower the burden of public agencies to during the response. Disasters are disasters because they're not easy, but if we can make it as easy as possible now, it has a big impact during the response phase of a disaster. So with that, I want to go ahead and get into the PowerPoint. So some of the upcoming community engagement events we have coming. We have a CERT basic course. So CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. This is a program I started in 2014, which is when I started with the county. We didn't have anything like it. We've trained over 100 people since its inception. We have bi-monthly meetings that we hold ongoing with our current members. We use these volunteers in various events. They've assisted with gas leaks. They assisted with the flooding events in 2017, and we hold every year we try to hold a training or exercise with them. We did last year, but expect another offering of the basic course in mid to late fall. and we're hoping to get a good turnout. There's been a lot of interest. We tried to hold one just recently, but unfortunately we only got about 4 signups. So we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to change the dates of it and hopefully be able to reach a wider audience and get more attendance. The other thing we're going to be doing is a emergency preparedness workshops. So the CERT course is a much bigger time investment. It's about 24 hours. These workshops, we've done them in the past. We've done them pretty much every year, and we either do them annually or we do them in response to something. And what I mean by something is, I think 2 years ago, the San Juan Bautista area had a lot of seismic activity within a couple days. So then we put these on pretty quickly to help educate people while there was still a lot of interest. This year, especially recently, there's been a lot of activity. I'm sure I don't have to tell you what's been going on, but we've had the big earthquake in Ridgecrest and all the subsequent earthquakes in that area, as well as events at the Garlic Festival and across the country. So it's a good time to hold these workshops. And then the other item, which I've come and spoken to you before, is the PSPS, the Public Safety Power Shutoff. So that's a big concern, especially for our populations with access and functional needs who depend on medical equipment or may not be able to walk or drive, and making sure that they're prepared and they know their options should there be an extended power outage. The other community event, or not event, but project we've been working on is 211. So 211 is again, I'm sure I don't need to tell you what it is, but basically you can call 211 from your phone, and it's basically Google, but you're talking to someone instead of on the computer or on the internet, and they're able to get answers on all sorts of stuff and get information. But for us, what's really nice is when we have a large event, we can direct people to call 211 for updates. So we've done this in the past for a gas leak, where we set up a shelter, people didn't really want to stay in the shelter, and we know only about 10% of people who are displaced even show up at the shelter, but we're able to tell them, call 211, and we will provide 211 with updates, and then they can give you the most recent information. So that's one way we use it. The other is September is Preparedness Month, so it is a month that's dedicated to emergency preparedness, and they have a new texting feature where you can text 211. And what we are doing is we're trying to get people to opt in, and we're going to be pushing out emergency preparedness tips to everybody who has opted in for every weekday of Preparedness Month. Just fun little facts. How much water do you need per day? It's a lot more than people think. What's the shelf life on food? Who do you call in case of a situation? That kind of stuff. So that's a big one that we are getting ready to start the media push, right? Doing articles and social media, et cetera. And we've been working with the Monterey County as well. Monterey County received a grant that we are part of to hire a community resiliency planner. And this is, and we're leveraging that position to help us with the planning of this. And it's going to occur in all 3 counties: Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito. So that's pretty exciting.
Mr. Chairman, before we move off of that slide, if I can ask Mr. O'Neill a question. On the emergency preparedness workshops, should we add another bullet? Maybe not this year, you got your programs lined up, but it's a concern with these mass shootings and active shooter scenarios. We're pretty isolated here in San Benito County. Hollister has just X amount of resources. Our sheriff has X amount of resources, and it's starting to be a concern, I think, nationwide. And should that be something that we should have workshops dealing with how our agencies are going to coordinate and manage something like that, because it's the first few minutes that is make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can edit these all the way up until the day we hold them. So that, I think that's a point well taken. The one reason I personally shy away from trying to teach active shooter is because I don't have the credibility as, you know, a law enforcement department. However, with that being said, we have a very strong partnership with the sheriff and the sheriff's department, and we have been collaborating and brainstorming on how we can bring more active shooter awareness, not only to the community, but to our employees here at San Benito County. And I will touch on that latter point in a future slide. But I think that's a great point. In the past, what we've done with these workshops is it hasn't always been just an OES show, right? So we facilitate, we give our information, but we've had the sheriff's office there, we've had the fire department there. Sometimes we have PG&E and various other experts of their fields to where they can touch on those things that they have a lot of credibility.
Yeah, and I also kind of feel that we have to make sure our school districts are involved in some of that planning process as well, you know, because I know in my district, and I think in Supervisor Gilliam's district, even though we have some small schools, who knows, and they're isolated, and they should know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to touch on that point a little bit in a subsequent slide. And that you're exactly right, and that's why we co-sponsored the event with the Office of Education to hold a school and school district preparedness meeting. Was it last month? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. I had a family emergency. But Crystal Lamonto, the county superintendent, and I have been strong partners in that as well. I mean, that is very important with such a large community population. You know, schools and school districts need to understand what their role is. And their role is to safeguard those kids until parents show up. And their facility could be used as a shelter in the event of an emergency too. And again, that latter point I will touch on in another little slide.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Sure. I appreciate what you're sharing, Supervisor Patel. I actually was there with Supervisor Gilio at that meeting that you weren't able to be at, Kevin. So it was really, really informative, and ultimately the goal with especially the active shooter conversation is to try to figure out how to provide resources or support mechanisms for our trained officials, our trained individuals like the Sheriff's Department and the fire department, everything for them to be able to coordinate. So the coordination element, I think that definitely should be a very internal mechanism, because we obviously don't want to broadcast our vulnerabilities. We want to make sure that we protect them. If anything, I definitely, so it's in agreement with you more, in my mind, more so trying to create a little bit more of a, as far as the everyday citizen, more of an encouragement as a support mechanism for your neighbors, you know, in such a situation where we don't allow our community to break down and cause divide. It's kind of towards the sentiment that I shared earlier. You know, there's certain folks that definitely are involved in trained in responding, and then on our end is how do we get people educated on helping each other and being a support for each other. And actually it piggybacks on the CERT element, because I know me and Supervisor Giller we're talking about it, is, you know, ultimately we want to be a community that is resilient. And I actually am going to be attending the resiliency, and I can't remember if it's going to be RCRC or CSAC, but I just know I'm lined up to go to get that training to bring that conversation back and ultimately try to create a stronger resiliency. So anyways, I won't get too wordy, but it's definitely in our peer review, and I totally agree we need to be prepared and responsive.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, which was that just because you don't see a lot going on in terms of active shooter doesn't mean it's not there. You know, we try not to, I don't want to speak for the sheriff, but we try not to broadcast tactics. We try not to highlight publicly our weaknesses, because, you know, there are some, right? But we don't want people to know what they are while we're working to improve our capabilities. And it's a process, you know, it's not an overnight thing. It's a long process of training and exercise and continuing that process, which again, I will touch on a little bit more in future slides. But back to your point, Supervisor Patello, schools are absolutely integral to this process, and that's why we've been working through Crystal Lamonto with the various schools, all of them, including the South County schools and Aromas, et cetera. Anything else on this slide? Okay.
If I can touch, sorry.
Yes.
Quick question, Kevin. Is it possible, because, you know, for me, I keep thinking about we're such a community. I'd love for more folks to get involved with the CERT training. I think it's a really vital tool. I actually have good friends who are CERT trained, and they're amazing folks. They're, you know, they have that Boy Scout mentality where they're there to help each other. So long and short, is there an opportunity for CERT training maybe like on the weekends, like 3 or 4 6-hour? You know, I know you've done it during the week, and I know it's tough for some folks. So just to try to accommodate, trying to get a bigger push to support that.
Yeah, so that's actually what we tried to do this last time when we only had 4 signups. Was we did it was only on the weekend. So it's really tough. You know, you can't make it good enough for everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of brainstorming what that's going to look like. It might be more weeknight meetings, but shorter, right? So rather than 4 weeks, maybe we do 8 weeks, and it's only an hour and a half, and we start later, right? To give people time to get home, have dinner with their family, and then come out. We might try to do what some people do is a full weekend. So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's Friday in the evening, and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I'm not a huge fan of that one, just because I think personally, if I'm at work all week, I don't really want to be at training all weekend and then back at work another whole week without being able to shut off a little bit. But we've been gauging interest and availability as we get people that are interested. We had I think about 20 people at National Night Out who signed our interest list, and we got a feeling for what works for them, and we'll keep trying, and we'll keep getting people trying.
I propose, if I may, it would be awesome if us as supervisors would join the CERT training cause and ultimately try to be, to a certain extent, and I, ultimately in my mind, the hope is that we get people to understand this. You could take it as, you know, your goal is to learn so that you could be a help to your community, or you could basically run away from her, you know, because I know some people, they don't, to deal with emergencies, it's like, to a certain extent, maybe a sensitive topic. But if we put it, as I've shared with some of the CERT folks, if we kind of broadcast it in a way that gets people excited to say, look, you're doing good things to help people that you care about, and frame it in a way that it's at that point when you know that you're responding to an emergency where your daughter, your son, or your family member, friend is involved, and you become, I think the perspective changes. But I definitely have been thinking about it, and I'd like to propose it, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
To encourage our Board of Supervisors to join and to sign up for CERT training. I know I've been myself vocal about wanting to sign up. I just want to figure out how to make it work so that I could be there.
Yeah, no, it's great.
You can sign me up.
Okay, great. I'll send you the information.
Thank
And
you.
that's another piece too. You know, we'll send you the information. Hopefully you can help get the word out as well, because it's hard to reach everybody who may be interested.
The Supervisor Gilio, is he already in CERT?
I don't believe so.
Oh, you can sign him up too.
Sounds good. All right. So I want to give you an update on our EOC. So currently our Emergency Operations Center, which is that central hub for information coordination, documentation, is located at the Hollister Police Department. It's in their main training room. That's a multi-purpose room that's used for a lot of things, but it's not very conducive to being an emergency operations center. It's a little too small. Emergency operations centers that have to be set up every time cause issues. You know, it's hard to make sure everything's running smoothly. It's set up the same way, et cetera. And so what we've been working on is we've been working with the city of Hollister, with the city manager, Billy Avera, and chief of police, and Mike Chambliss, their public works and airport manager, to build an EOC at the airport. So that is in progress. The building permits have been pulled. It's ready to go. Mike Chambliss is using his own workforce to do the work, and we're expecting that to be up and running in about 2 months. The space already exists. It's not a ground up type thing, so it's really just repurposing the space, and that will increase our capabilities tenfold. We'll be able to more easily train. We'll be able to hold more community meetings. It'll give us a home to where we can really dedicate ourselves to that core mission of providing coordination to emergency responders, because it'll all be set up. It'll all be turnkey ready. So we are at the construction phase. After that will be a quick equipment, so getting the TVs up, the desks, et cetera, which was included in the budget this year, so thank you for supporting that. And then to start to train it and exercise it. It's going to be a new facility for everybody, so we need to get everybody up to speed as quick as possible so that it is as effective as possible. With that comes updating plans to reflect this new space, the new capabilities, and the new way we do things. The emergency operations plan, we have an updated plan that's basically ready to go. All I'm waiting for is this emergency operations center so that I can have the location in there. I don't want to put the location in it until it's up and running. So you'll be seeing that before the board for adoption right around the time where the emergency operations center is going to be ready to go as well. So hoping for about October. And then various support annexes, et cetera. We have something called job action sheet. So every position in the Emergency Operations Center has a job action sheet which lays out all of the roles and responsibilities of the position. It also has our policies, our department policies, our EOC policies. So how to do things, how to sign in and out, procurement, call lists, everything you need to operate in an Emergency Operations Center. So we'd have to update those with a little more specifics, but those are pretty much ready to go as well. Our backup emergency operations center will remain at the police department, and then our tertiary backup would be at the sheriff's office. So training, we have quite a few. I went out about 6 months to give you a snapshot of what we have going on. We have a basic requirement that we established. Ray and I worked on it. We sent appointment letters to all EOC staff. And what it is that they have to attend these first 3 classes you see here. So SEMS, NIMS combined. So that's the Standardized Emergency Management System and the National Incident Management System. These are the programs that we follow. It establishes the systems, it establishes the requirements, et cetera, of an EOC activation. Things like span of control, common terminology, organizational structure, et cetera. So this is a basic course. It's about 4 hours, and that gives all the background to our EOC staff and beyond of, excuse me, of how we operate and what we do. We then build on that in our EOC operations and management course, where we start to get into more of the nitty-gritty of how the EOC operates and how it's managed. And then EOC ICS interface, so Emergency Operations Center, Incident Command System being the structure that's used at the field level, so that our fire chiefs, police officers, et cetera, use when they are at the issue, as opposed to in the EOC, and how we talk. And this class is essentially an exercise. We set up a mock situation, people go through the motions, and really get a feel for the flow of the Emergency Operations Center and how information goes back and forth. We hold these courses every year, at least once, and so you'll see the ones for this year, this fiscal year, are coming up. And then each year we also do some more specialized, more specific classes. So Web EOC is a tool we have. It's a web-based program where we manage resources, documentation, et cetera. And so we'll be doing a training on how that works, logins, how to request resources, et cetera. And then we are going to do section-specific courses. So the EOC is broken up into 5 sections: management, operations, planning, logistics, and finance. So this year we are focusing on planning and logistics. Next year, I think we have operations and finance. And I will say we have a 3-year plan, right? This is all laid out over 3 years. Every year we update it. So it's a new window of 3 years. So it's all pre-established. And then the other thing we're going to do is not everybody in the county is in the Emergency Operations Center. You know, we have 400 employees. There's only about 130 people in the city and the county who are assigned to the Emergency Operations Center at various shifts. There's only about 30 to 40 at any given time, but there's backups and multiple shifts. So for everybody else, including the Emergency Operations Center people, we are going to be holding a 1 to 2 hour webinar for all staff. We have a Zoom now, the video teleconferencing system, so we're able to put this on, share PowerPoints, answer questions virtually, so we don't have to bring everybody in somewhere. And we're going to cover information like active shooters, what to do in the workplace. Again, we're going to we're going to work with the Sheriff's Department so they can help provide information, use some videos that are publicly available to help teach people what they need to do and what they should do, what people's work obligations are in a disaster. What do they do? So if there's a disaster on the weekend, what do they do? Well, what the policy says is that they show up to work and they get an update from their department head on what their role is. It could be, hey, go home and we'll call you, or it could be, we need you at this shelter. We need you to help hand out water, whatever that assignment may be. And then home preparedness. And the reason home preparedness is important is the same reason why CERT's important, because if someone's home is not in order, they're not prepared, they're worried about their wife, their kids, their husband, their dog, they're not going to be much help to us as the county. So we want to make sure that our employees are just as prepared at home as the citizens of the community. So, and then on the exercise side, so that's the training side, we have a functional field-based exercise that we are planning at Benito Park. This is something new that we added on in light of recent events. Again, I don't really want to get into specifics about what it is, but I will tell you that it is in direct response to some of our more recent events. And that is just a way, the functional exercise basically is going out and going through the motions, doing the job and practicing it. So it's getting all the disciplines together to practice together. And Benito Park's an interesting location because technically it's CHP jurisdiction and technically it's CAL FIRE jurisdiction. But nothing's going to happen there without San Benito County Sheriff's Department, Hollister Police Department, and Hollister Fire Department. Nothing big, at least. And so it's exercising, bringing all those partners together. The other thing we have is in October, we're going to have an EOC tabletop exercise. Tabletop meaning that is an exercise where we talk through what's going on rather than actually filling out paperwork and making phone calls and doing all the stuff by hand and on computers. We just kind of talk through the scenario, kind of get our minds going of how it works and practice it more theoretically. And then in November, we're going to follow up with a functional exercise, which is actually doing it. So going over the theory, what we would do, and then actually doing it. And the scenarios will be a little different to keep people on their toes. But this is something we do every year. And we do our EOC functional exercise in November because the Public Health Department is mandated to do a statewide medical and health exercise. And so we're doing it in conjunction with them this year. So our EOC is going to activate, and they're going to activate their Department Operations Center. And part of what we're going to practice is that communication coordination between the two of us. So what we do, kind of spoke to this earlier. We are putting together monthly stakeholder meetings. So that core group, the fire chief, police chief, sheriff, we'll try to get 911 there as well as other partners, EMS, and just start talking about various projects, various topics, what's going on across the country, what do we need to start focusing on to make sure that we are on track, that we're doing what we need to do, and that we're communicating. We're going to keep moving forward with the school preparedness. Like we talked, the meeting that was held last month, that wasn't the beginning and the end, that was the beginning, right? We want to start doing something with the schools and the school districts probably every 6 months, keep them up to date on what's going on, keep them trained and address any of their concerns. And then we continue to work with the Fire Safe Council. We supported a meeting that was held at Hollister Hills a couple months ago. Their ongoing meetings, some of the work that's being done in San Juan Canyon to help make them ready for a wildfire should it happen, as well as other topics. Other ongoing projects, the Power Safety Public Shutoff, 211, partner MOUs. So what we've been doing with MOUs is we've been trying to get an MOU with every school in the county. Every school could potentially be used as a shelter, and we want to make sure that our expectations of each other are documented and well known before we have to go and use that facility. Every year we manage a couple $100,000 in grants, and every year we're updating our plans. This year our focus for our plans is the PSP plan, which is complete in draft form, our updating our emergency operations plan, which again I said is pending, the new EOC, our continuity of operations / continuity of government plan, mass fatality, which is nearly complete, and our risk communication plan. And then we're working through a flood recovery. We have 2 outstanding projects. And then there's various regional projects we're a part of too. We're part of the Bay Area Urban Area Security Initiative, which is 12 counties around the Bay Area. So there's a lot of projects that that come from there as well that we participate at a regional level. So that's the end of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I will add one more thing, if you don't mind. Sorry to cut you off. You know, I'm always available. If you guys have questions, please give me a call, text me. Let's set up some time. Let's talk. Let's get some coffee. I'd love to get your take on things and make sure we're doing what you as elected officials want to see.
I see the sheriff out there. Do you have anything to add, sir?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Kevin, thank you for the great presentation. I appreciate your time and your efforts keeping us ready. I think we've talked about this before. Emergency preparedness is a critical element for the county to be ready. And I think we need to lead in this, right? We have San Juan Bautista, Romas, unincorporated, obviously, Tres Pinos, Hollister. I think we need to be the leaders and be ready. And I am committed as one supervisor to getting you the resources that you need, lobbying the state, talking to any, applying for any grants, helping out personally. I was very happy to hear the very last comment you made that we're participating in working with UWASI. When was the last time we worked with them? Do we participate in their exercises, or how does that work?
Yeah, they have exercises every year. We try to do our EOC exercise in conjunction with them, participate at some level. Unfortunately, their exercises are kind of tough for us to participate in because they tend to happen up in San Francisco, and there's just not much that.
Yeah, and they had some controversy over Urban Shield last time. So I think
yes, and this year it's all.
Of that.
Yeah, this year it's all up in the air because Alameda County decided not to support it this year. So the training and exercise program is defunct for right now. Right. But we participate with them, I mean, ongoing. We've gotten grant dollars from them. We are on all of their working groups. So it's an ongoing positive relationship.
Okay. Yeah, so you know, just to summarize, to you, the sheriff, to search and rescue, even the police department, everybody that is involved in this response, I want to let you know that, you know, we're talking in the grand scheme of things, if you need $50, $60, $70, $100, $120, $150,000, that's a very small amount when you look at what the end result will be if we're not prepared. And frankly, being not prepared means lives, and we've seen that in other jurisdictions. So I wanted to commend you on your report today and let you know that I personally, I can't speak for the board, support you in what you need. If you need other equipment to outfit this EOC to get it to where the standard, that it's a gold standard for our area, let me know, please. I'd want to try to work on that for you. Thank you.
I will definitely come back and ask for more if we need it. Thank you for your support.
Good. Mr. Chair, thank you. So kind of piggybacking on what Supervisor Gilliam had mentioned, I remember us having a lively conversation through basically CSAC, our training, and that was part of the conversation. We actually had folks that had dealt with a fire emergency, and you know, there was obviously a lot of gaps to their program, but they did the best that they could, and they were very responsive, and there was a lot of education ultimately as far as the experience of how to deal with something such as severe as like the fire in Paradise. There was a lot of, now they have a lot bigger understanding, and that really informed us because there's things that we don't know. And we don't know could ultimately become, at that point, like Supervisor Gilliam mentioned, it could be a casualty. So, you know, the best thing I think we could do is come together as a community and support something that's very much needed, and ultimately to a certain extent could be a rallying cry for us to work together to a greater extent than we ever have before. So I know that I'm very focused on even on the you know, for lack of better words, the cultural level, those folks to get involved in search and rescue. I know those folks are very passionate folks. I've met them, and especially at National Night Out, had a lively conversation with them, and they were, you know, I know that their heart is there to ultimately support their community. They pay out of their own pocket to do things that, you know, maybe some folks wouldn't be so motivated because it could be pretty expensive, especially when you're being called out to other emergency situations across the state, and you're basically a volunteer organization. So all things considered, I'm really passionate about supporting this just the same. Thank you, Kevin.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, Kevin, you do a great job for our county. No matter what we ask you to do, you step up and do a great A work. And I just appreciate this report. You have a heavy schedule of training. And one of the things that it's really ongoing. You know, when you get done, you start all over again because you have new people, new ops. You know, it's just real good work, and I appreciate everything that you do for us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any further questions? Any questions from the audience? Bring it back to the board. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to close session?
If the board has no objection, we're going to continue 18 and 19 to the next meeting. Number 20 would be closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to 54956.9, number of cases ones authorized by D2 and E1 of that section. 21, closed session conference with real property negotiators, section 54956.8. Property street address, Buena Vista Road, APN 019230002. It's on Buena Vista Road. And the agency negotiators are Ray Espinoza and Barbara Thompson. Negotiating parties are Granite Rock under negotiation price and terms of payment. Closed session 22, conference with legal counsel, threat to public services or facilities under Government Code Section 54957A. And 23 is closed session conference with labor negotiators, Michael McDougall, Ray Espinoza, Edgar Nolasco, Stuart Patry, Elvia Barocchio, and Barbara Thompson, employee organizations, institutions, association, law enforcement, management employees group, SEIU Local 521, Deputy Sheriff's Association, confidential employees, confidential management employees, associate, appointed department heads, and unrepresented employees, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6.
Any speaker cards from the public? Seeing none, we'll go to closed session.